Welcome to the video where we will briefly discuss the concept of takt time in the Takt production system as a part of this series. So the first thing that I want to say when it comes to takt time is that it is a beat. So if you can hear the constant rhythm of my hands clapping on the audio, and or in your mind think of the beat of a drum or any kind of rhythmic sound, you can kind of tie that to the concept of takt planning, which is that in car manufacturing or in other lean settings in manufacturing, you will have products being produced on that beat or rhythm. In construction, you will have trades moving through zones on that same rhythm, meaning that on that beat, they will move from one zone to another. And this takt time enables us to calculate the speed of the train, the overall throughput time, and really calculate all other metrics in the takt production system, which enable us to monitor it as a system. And so this introductory picture is really important to me to show the phase and zones, which we've already talked about, on a takt time. You'll see the example that we've been using here, the interiors for level 2. This is on a 3-day takt time. That means every 3 days, the trades will move to a forward zone, and that is the pace at which they are moving. So it's a key indicator of the speed. You'll see other phases in the example. So the exteriors, for example, the exteriors is still on a 5-day takt time. So your phases can have different takt times. And that's the purpose of this opening picture, is that the phase should have its overall takt time. And if it's a multi-train phase, then you will have the slowest trade on its own takt time, which will be the pace setting takt time. But each phase will have its own unique takt time. And so as we go through this course, and specifically this topic about takt time, I want you to understand that the intersection of time, or takt time, and space is what enables us to visualize every lean concept inside the system, and to be able to visualize proper methods for managing the system, proper methods for implementing the system, and it really gives visibility to everything that we do. So at the intersection of takt time and zones, you'll see your trade processes, which means that the work packaging, the work packages or the scopes of work that are going to happen within this time in this zone are shown in what's called a takt wagon. So it's always location, time, process, location, time, process, or zone, takt time, scope. So the takt time component rounds this whole thing out so that we can actually perform the calculations and monitor the system. So another thing that takt time enables us to do, now that we have zones, is it gives us the other parameter inside the system so that we can see concepts like workflow and trade flow on a rhythm with consistent work. One of the main things that I really love is this Little's Law formula, or Louis and Binniger's law, which is takt wagons plus takt zones minus 1 multiplied by the takt time. So you see this is a key component, or a key part of the formula here, equals the duration. So if you have a 2-zone strategy for 3 wagons here, and this is on a 3-day takt time, you can plug this in to your formula, right? So you have 3 wagons plus 2 zones minus 1 multiplied by a 3-day takt time equals 12 days. Well, now that we have our wagons and we have our zones, and now the third component, the takt time, we're able to plug that into the formula and get our duration, and also play around with other scenarios. So if you look at this page right here, we went to 3 wagons, of course, but a 1-day takt time with 6 zones. You plug that into the calculator, and now you have 8 days. So you've shortened the sequence. And so I want you to understand that even if your takt plans aren't perfectly on an even takt time, maybe it's a multi-train takt plan, maybe there's some variation throughout, it is the takt time component with zones that enables us to do these really cool calculations and know how many zones that we should have and be able to gain buffers at the end. So this is called optimization, and it is enabled by takt time. So the other thing that I really like about this when I'm thinking about it is the ability to visualize the pace of the work. And so there are three diagrams here. One is where we have trade efficiency only, work efficiency only, and then where we have high levels of both. And so I want to show what happens when we analyze takt time and zones. So when we have trade efficiency only, it causes big gaps between trades because it prioritizes each trade's desired production rate. So you'll see that this first trade has its own pace and its own takt time, its own pace and its own takt time, so on and so forth. So you'll end up with these inefficiency gaps is what we call them. If you ignore the takt time and the rhythm and you're just trying to move everything to the left, this is a typical CPM schedule. It will overburden your trades because it does not respect the trade's ability to actually accomplish work, right? So this is having too much of an individualization of a takt time. This is a no takt time, right? When you intersect takt and the takt time and location with high levels of work and trade efficiency, you get trade flow. So that means you have work flowing in the area, but you also have work flowing from area to area. So this means that trades and work can be efficient together. And so that's when time, which is the takt time, meets space, and we merge that and we prioritize high levels of work and trade efficiency. Now we have flow, and it's all enabled by that rhythm and by that takt time. And so I do want to say that when you are doing your own takt planning and you're taking your takt planning journey, just remember that some takt plans are resource focused or resource based. And that means that you might start with a rhythm, you might end with a rhythm, but you might see some variation here in the center, right? You might see some duplication. You see these 9s are one-offs. You see the 10s are as well. When we force, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but when we force all of our activities into wagons and force them into the takt time, you'll see more of what we have here on the bottom, where you see all of the wagons equally packaged, which means that the activities were put into those packages, and that's more of a takt time focused planning method inside the takt production system. And so you can be rigid with takt time at the start and the finish only, or the start, the finish, and everything in between. One of the key things that I want you to understand is that you're reading the book is you're probably wondering, hey, why when we first start our macro, are we on a 5-day takt time? And then why when we plug it into the calculator and finalize it, are we still on a 5-day takt time? But then when we go from macro to norm, why are we then in an adjusted takt time, meaning we won't stick with the 5-day? And really the answer is when we put takt plans in a format in a 5-day, they really show up quite beautifully to where the entire team can see well on one page exactly what's going on, okay? And so we like to fix that 5-day takt time from a formatting perspective. Maybe one day we get away from that, but then you'll have your zones and your work packaging. When you go from that guess, like I talked to you about, and we take it to the final macro level takt plan, we want to keep it in that same fixed 5-day takt time, at least for the macro, which means that if we are adjusting zones, we also have to adjust the work packaging. That's why we originally had 25 wagons and then it moved to 15, because the work in here, because we have smaller zones now, those sequences shrink, and instead of 25 wagons, we only need 15. So then when we go from the macro to the norm, remember when we went from the 5-zone strategy to the 11, we're not going to fix that anymore because we don't care about being in a 5-day takt time. So the takt time in our example goes to 3, our zone count goes to 11, and then our work packaging obviously adjusts, especially because it's based off of a pull plan. So just keep that in mind as you're doing takt planning, the reason why we do it. One thing that I really need you to know as you go through this video and this section is that one of the worst things, like the worst sin that you can ever make with takt planning, is to stay with a 5-day takt time and lock it within the weekend. So follow me on this one. I know there's a lot going on here, but it's explaining some information. So if your team said every Monday, I want that takt time drumbeat to hit because I'm using the weekends and I'm packaging work into a 5-day takt time in a takt wagon that uses that 5-day. Well, if you have a delay and you're really wanting to hold this start date on Monday, then you'll start to work Saturday. Then if you have another delay, you'll push even farther into Saturday. Now, because the general contractor wants to pace everything still on Mondays, you're starting the crews back even though they're tired. Now, if you have another delay, the crews are like, I'm not working another Saturday. It eats into the following week. And now all of your trade partners get frustrated. They're like, Takt doesn't work. We're off rhythm. I was supposed to have this area on Monday and I don't. And then if you want to get back on rhythm on Monday, you would have to eat through not only the one buffer day, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to reset the system. So you would have to eat through 5 buffer days, which isn't efficient. Not to mention the fact that you're working 1, 2, at a minimum Saturdays. So the better idea is to, even if you have a 5-day takt time, not lock it within the weekend. So if we go down here and you have a 5-day takt time and you have the first day, the second day, then a delay, then that pushes into Monday, that's fine. We can just reset the day on which we are making the transition. Let's say there's another delay, it just pushes, another delay, it just pushes, right? And so now you have a new rhythm that hits on Thursday morning instead of Monday morning. In this scenario, you only eat into 3 buffers instead of 5, and you're not working Saturdays and overburdening people. So one of the biggest sins in takt planning is to stick with a 5-day takt time and lock it within the weekends. And so I hope what you've gotten from this little video is that every phase will have its own takt time, and they can be different. And the takt time enables all of these wonderful things. It enables our ability to optimize and to calculate the speed of the train. It enables us to really understand how the trades are flowing through the actual phase itself. It enables us to really set a rhythm and to overcome delays in a proper manner. So takt time is key. Like I said, even if you depart from the rhythm a little bit, or even if you have a resource-focused takt time planning method, or if you have a multi-train takt plan, it's totally fine. We still have takt time in the zones. And so I hope you've enjoyed this little video. On we go.